Today, I'm up over $77,000 on the trading day, and in this video, you'll see exactly how I was able to do that through my bias, my trade, and my execution, all done live in front of 700 plus people. If you're curious on what the trade was right here. We took a beautiful long on ES after coming in and having a specific game plan. But before we get into the trade, well, let's talk about exactly what we were looking for. So coming into the open, we had a bullish bias. Looking at this real quick, a simple overview of why we had that bullish bias. Well, three main components. If you haven't watched my video going over exactly how I identify my bias, go back and there's a video on my YouTube channel, precisely talking about it. Well, for this here specifically, in terms of today's session, had three components line up and had my A+ bias. Well, let's get into it. First things first, higher time frame outlook. The first thing we recognized via higher time frame was how engulfing we were. Higher time frame bullish via trading 4-hour fair value gap. If you look at the 4-hour fair value gap here on both ES and NQ, what you're able to see is we had a very large and displacement 4-hour gap. We see price come up and we see price raid that 4-hour gap. Alongside that, we saw a very engulfing sequence through the new week opening gap, which is where you see your Friday close and your Sunday open meet, and we see a very bullish sequence. From there, I simply identified what I wanted to see price run into in terms of targets. First target of interest was this hourly and 4-hour wick high. Right above that, you have your all-time highs. Next component, overnight price. If you guys know me, I'm a large advocate in using extended trading hours. Overnight price precisely was an area of interest where I wanted to see price move well in order to identify our bias a bit better. And that's what we did. Coming into the open, we had a glance at overnight price. And what did we see price do? Well, we see price gap up almost 1,000 points, maybe a bit more. And on top of that, not one point in time did we see price retrace at all through Asia and the bulk of London. You see price consistently create higher lows here, and you see price be consistent in the engulfing sequence and constantly create new highs. So for me specifically, first two components, higher time frame and overnight price, you could see that it's clear as day coming into New York Open. At least at the very minimum, overnight price was very bullish. Well, what is the final set piece in identifying our bias? It's the opening range move, which if you guys don't know, it's the first move off our New York Open into an overnight high or low, where we see the reaction and base our judgment and bias off it. So us being bullish already through the higher time frame outlook in the 4-hour time frame, and us seeing price engulf overnight and see price consistently trade bullish through Asia and London, all we need in New York to do off the open was showcase interest in higher. Well, what do we do here off the open in terms of our open interest? We see price come up here in our London high created before the open, and we see price engulf over, and we see price cause a bullish reaction. So now we have our higher time frame outlook, and now we have our overnight price outlook, and now we have our opening range move trade bullish. So all three align, and all we're now looking for here price is to clear up and take a clear entry model. Well, before we had our winning trade, we actually ended up taking a loss. We took a loss on an ES long, which we ended up taking off a 5-minute gap entry. So after identifying our bias, we stuck to ES because we looked at ES and NQ in reference, and we identified that ES was slightly more leading. We take the trade and we see price come down here and tap this 5-minute gap, where we then confirm off this entry precisely at 10:03 a.m. Again, I want to make this reference, or I want to be important with this real quick. You don't see me blindly enter longs. We have a large identity in terms of what our bias wants to be, what we expect price to do. If price wasn't as clear with components in our bias, we wouldn't be looking to be risk on here. So it's not because we're just taking a trade just to take a trade. Our bias is identified, we recognize that price is bullish, and now we're looking for an entry model. We see price come up here, 5-minute tap, we then see price come back up here, and a beautiful confirmation sequence. Despite the outcome of this trade, we had a beautiful confirmation sequence at 10:03 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Unfortunately, price wanted to retrace a bit more before giving that second look. So you see me mention that right here. You see the setup. No long entry provided, that was the first idea. This is the second idea here, which ended up confirming and giving us a trade entry. 5-minute gap tap, boom, you mentioned I am long, and then we eventually end up getting stabbed out. Well, I think the reason in invalidation off this trade was simply due to price wanting a retracement. But here's the important thing. Lance, you got stopped out here. Like, how do I provide these stop outs, or how do I avoid these stop outs in the future? Well, here's the thing. Sometimes you're going to get stopped out. Even when you have the right bias or your bias is A+, you're going to sometimes get stopped out. The important thing is you size appropriately. And on a day like today, if you're in the room in the Discord, we are half our risk. Mondays and Fridays, we half size on the week because we believe that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays are the best moving sessions historically, right? So we're basing off that. We go half risk here, we come down and take a loss. We're half or down. If you size appropriately, you were completely fine. And after this happened, I referenced and I talked to my chat about the importance of having the proper sizing needed, and we simply looked for re-entry, right? Our bias wasn't, invalidated here, unless we saw a price come down here, shift back down, and completely, mitigate the opening range move and see price heavily trade back down lower. Price was still there. I will say the 1 point for this trade right here specifically that took the L on, it's a bit unfortunate because we ended up getting essentially bottom wicked off this invalidation point. We had this stop be this relative low. In my belief, I felt if price were to come down here and close under, there's a good chance we could see price come down and trade even lower, which is a good invalidation point. Here's the thing that happened though. We saw price wick the low instead. So that was a bit unfortunate, and it is what it is. But again, we simply stood patient, and we were looking for price to clear up. Here's the thing I recognized. With price and how it was here, before taking our second entry, we had recognized that price was slowing down, a bit more consolidative, right? We weren't as aggressive in terms of upside as we were off the open. So for me specifically, I knew had we taken a second entry in order to offset this bad price, we would simply have to use a bit bigger of a stop. And that was kind of the outlook that we had here, right? Potential re-entry seems ES and NQ are even, just slower than an open. Idea here is the 1 minute bearish gap into a bullish inversion gap, stop relative low. Break even stops once high of days ran at target 76.41 right here. And that was kind of the ideology. This is a 1 minute gap entry. Was this 1 minute gap as big as the 5 minute gap? No. But however, we had swept internal liquidity and my bias was still there completely. We didn't see invalidation of that bias. Remember that. We come up here and we eventually provide entry, again, off a beautiful confirmation sequence where we see price engulf and seek a nice closure. Our confirmation candle on this trade was 10:29 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We end up having our stop again base the relative low, a bit wider, but again, in order to offset the potential risk of getting wicked out and choppy price. And here's the thing. We see price enter and we immediately deal with some drawdown initially. And the good thing about this stop is that we didn't get wicked out, right? Had we had our stop say this low, this relative low, just because we wanted a better R on a trade potentially, we would have gotten bottom wicked. But instead, we used price and we used structure to our advantage, and utilizing our system, we based our stop relative low, gave the trade breathing room in case it wanted to see a bit of a retrace, which is what it did, and then eventually came back up here and we saw price go. And we see price come up here and we see price take out that high of day, go risk-free the moment that does happen. You see me mention that via right here. After saying I am long, I am break even stops. We then eventually trail our stops as price goes higher and higher and higher to eventually where we see price ultimately smash our take profit goal in that TP1 being that hourly internal high. At the time of this recording, I'm still holding this trade with trailed stops. I realized most of it on my props and ideally, we'll see how the rest of this trade pans out. But at minimum, a day where it was very good, right? Our first trade was a half R loss, and our second trade was a +1 R. Or in terms of half R day size, our first trade was a -1 R, and our second trade was a +2 R off TP1. And you see me kind of mention that in here. And the one thing I want to reference real quick is how awesome seeing my system and my model come into fruition for these traders in our community, right? These dope ass people, because you see them just absolutely showcase their wins and their absolute, mega trades that they held with us, right? You see it over and over again. You see these payouts. Obviously, you can just go into the testimonials channel. Awesome. But I think the most important thing that I want to stress when it comes to this review is the importance of your psychology. We didn't freak out after initially getting stopped out. We simply stuck to our plan and kept moving forward, right? And now we're great on the day because we stood patient and we finally had a second entry, adjusted, and saw the reward get panned out. $77,000 on the day. A beautiful session. And with that being said, that's the review. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Catch you guys in the next one.